is time for Corner Talk, presented by the Original Music Makers and Listeners Corner. I want to introduce Laura Guerra. She's the admin of this fantastic group where we get to do things like this and meet and talk to other musicians, check out each other's music, comment on each other's music, and make online or otherwise friendships. I also want to give a shout out to the moderators, TJ Johnson and Keith Eastwood. Those guys are the muscles behind the group. So any problems come up, we got to deal with one or both of these guys. Lastly, but not in that order, I want to introduce Darman DeFlern for that great intro video, and I want to give him props. We're basically kind of sort of taking turns on these episodes of Corner Talk, so go ahead and check that out. He got a few online, and I'm going to have a few online. And anyway, enough of all that stuff. I am here with Age of Fiction, Brian and Holly. Say hi, guys.
Hey, what's going on?
You guys are what's going on tonight. It's the Brian and Holly Age of Fiction show.
Woo! We're happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
For sure. So, before we get into Age of Fiction, you guys have been around for a while, so we're going to go back into the past a little bit. In our pre-production conversations, etc., you guys mentioned meeting as teens. So, why don't we start there?
See, I knew it was going to start.
Right, a little love story.
It really did start there so long ago. And what's weird is how it seems like yesterday, at the same time it was so long ago, because when you see the same person for 30 years, you really don't notice them change day to day.
No.
And so, I don't know, Brian's 17 to me, because I met him when I was 15. And, yeah, we went to the same school in rural Alaska, which is a bonding experience. And also just we hit it off. We were oddballs. We were introduced by a friend of mine who knew me really well, my best friend.
I hugged her at a dance.
Not my best friend.
That's what I see. I hugged her at a dance.
He did hug me, and it was.
And then
the
she
best
hunted me down.
I did.
She found out where she called. I think she called me.
I called your mom.
You called my mom.
I did. I went straight for the mom.
And then she called me at my friend's house.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and I was, teenagerly awkward about it, of course. But I was okay with it as well because, she was cute redhead that sang and played the keyboards and wrote music, and I kind of always wanted that. And then there she was, so I was just like, cool. And I spent a few years like watching her write music and just staring at her with my mouth agape, and just enjoying, because it was always good. So I guess you could say I still am her biggest fan, and that also I learned almost everything from her.
That is so cool. So you guys didn't start playing together right off the bat once you became the official couple now, did you?
No.
We did all kinds of art together. I mean, photography, drawing, acting, dance, all kinds of disciplines of art. I was really involved in
crafts,
art. And Brian would just go anywhere I went, and we just loved hanging out together. We would talk forever about music, and we had...
About everything.
We did, about absolutely everything, but the music part was really striking to me because at the time, I think I saw myself as an actor, dancer, musician, or something. I liked to do all of those.
She was teaching dance. She was teaching dance at the local dance school. She was teaching kids and stuff up to, I don't know, whatever age, but so she was doing dance and doing a lot of dance at that time, and writing her own songs and stuff, and
you were painting for hours, drawing for hours, just really to himself. Just
it kind of worked out that she could, especially later on when we got older and we're married or just in college together and stuff, she'd get this feeling of some song, right? She'd start needing to write it, and I'd watch her, and she'd boom, and it was like, you probably know, it's just this need to write it, and you start writing, and I'd immediately recognize the process as the artistic process, and it would make me feel like painting. And so I'd pull out a canvas or something and sit there, and I'd just paint while she was writing her song, and I'd just do my thing and paint, whatever, and it was like this nice way for both of us to create, together.
Now, were you playing drums at the time, Brian, or were you just focused on the art thing?
I always wanted to play drums, like when you're in elementary school, and I forget what grade, and you're in music class, and they're like, okay, let's see what instrument maybe you can play, right? And they ask you if you had an opinion, they'd let you try it, and I was like, I want drums, and they showed me the sticks and the pad stuff, and then said, now you got to go and get permission from your parents. And well, my mom was a nurse, and she was tired because of that, as you can imagine, and and she said, no way in hell. Yeah, and she's an artist. She was very positive towards creating, and everything I learned really was from her. But no drums. So I went and I took out some wooden spoons and all of her pans while she was gone, and I brought them up into my room, and I beat the living shit out of the bottom of them for about an hour till I got tired, and then I put them back. And I think there was some kind of talking to about all the dents on the bottom of her pans and what the hell were those from. And then I forgot about it for a while. And actually, coming back to drumming is all because of Holly. It's because, she's a natural educator. She gets that from her father.
My dad was a wildlife biologist, naturalist, educator.
And an artist.
So it's a real weird set of, I grew up with falcons and an educator guy.
We could have a whole nother episode
of us
talking about Holly's dad.
Or nature
but
in Alaska or something. We could go on.
Yeah, but anyways, where was I? I digress.
You were beating pots and pans.
What's that?
Pots and pans.
You were beating pots and pans.
Yeah. So, right, like I said, I owed it all to Holly. Because it was the fact that she always believes, and still does, and always has believed, that everybody has music inside of them. And always supports anyone's creativity and anyone's music fully, anything like that. And so she saw someplace in me where I had talent and just always I
thought he had this amazing baritone voice, and he was really down on himself when it came to performing arts, yet there's this snickery little scamp of an attitude in him where if he just got the urge, he'd just join a ballet class and blow them away with a torchete and walk away like everything was normal, and everyone's jaw would fall down because he could knock any art out of the park when he decided he wanted to, and I kind of loved that. I was like, oh, you have all this power, but you don't decide to use it. It's a very romantic novel sort of boyfriend to get. I felt really lucky. I was kind of romantic about things, and I fancied myself, this dreamer Renaissance girl or something, and he was just perfect for that. He would go along with my whims and schemes, and we're co-conspirators in all that we do.
So, leading up to Age of Fiction, you sent me a list of, or we talked both, of things that you had done leading up to this. Do you want to talk about some of these projects? I know you had some solo stuff going on.
Yeah, I'll just give a quick rundown of the history. I started out making just some regular demos all the time back in Alaska, 1998. I used to Brian used to help me rig a toboggan sled to pull the 80-pound piano top around in the snow to some coffee houses and stuff. And about that time, I recorded a whole bunch of stuff. I recorded again a couple of years later, And I have these sort of albums, but I haven't released those yet. But I am going to release them in the future. I'm slowly going through those. I got really distracted by the ability for us to do this project and wanted to just focus on that. But there was that project, so those will come out later as a prequel. And Redshift exists, which was an album I did in the years that we first moved to Seattle. And right after, I think I got hit by, I kind of came out of a Celtic place I was in and really went heavily into sort of more prog rock as favorite music, and really went into the psychedelic prog and the heavy metal and prog. And I loved it all so much. And so I did this Redshift album in the planetarium. I was doing it as a solo act at the time. Brian was playing the djembes by then and getting really into moving his djembe into kind of a kick drum position. He was warming up for a kit, basically.
I actually I don't know, it's kind of funny and silly, whatever. I had some hand drums and I just kind of put them together like they were a regular kit and just played a bunch of hand drums. I'd come across this kick pedal and I was using a 16-inch djembe to, as a kick drum, just because of the sound being different. Yeah. But anyways.
Well, that whole thing led to the Redshift because we were jamming all the time. I had started to move into synthesizers and I started coming up with these songs, and I was basically like a lady from space. I had these antennas mounted to my head. They were 10-foot tall, like television antennas. Brian helped mount to my headset monitor, and I would reel them up and kind of like look into the heavens and kind of pull the space down into me, and then I would perform all these spacey songs.
Call the mothership.
Yeah, I would call to the mothership, and I would like do this whole act. Sometimes I would paint myself silver. I was wearing faux fur a lot, and it was a kind of a performance act thing, and I was doing it in some places around Seattle, and people were loving it. And so I made an album. I was working in a planetarium at the time, and a guy helped me record it in there. A friend of mine was a laserist and worked on the X-Files and had
John Borcherding.
Yeah, John Borcherding, and he'd had all this training and sound, and so he happily recorded me in the planetarium in which I worked over a couple of nights. And I'm going to put that out for official release, but it is available on YouTube to look at. That whole album is all on one track. But if you wait, the sort of video switches over and you can read the names of the songs on the back. But that was a really big deal. Brian worked on the art for that. I think that was the beginning of Age of Fiction for me musically, because I was changing into something more syncopated that would, I was jamming more in jam bands with more instruments. And so it was getting to the point where
I think it was for me too, because that was, you were doing that even though I wasn't playing music with you.
Mm-hmm.
While you were doing it, I got involved in like the performance act. I mean, I was even painted in gold, and and that's actually, I did the some throat singing.
Brian introed me and held down some keys and some intro stuff, and there was theater involved.
So it was the first time we had performed together for that. We had performed together on stage in plays and such in the past, but never like with me performing with her music. And for obvious reasons, as a couple in a relationship, it's touchy to get into each other's artwork and have say and be like, hey, this is also my art, and it's like, especially when, it's not just that we're two different members in a band, she writes the music. It's really her music, it's coming out of her brain and it's being laid down, and I'm coming in feeling it, and playing to what I feel in the music. And so it took a long time, from that point, from being painted gold and throat singing, to her being like, I'm ready to, but it's not that we didn't play together. Music, we jammed during a lot of this time with a lot of our friends. We just get together all the time,
Jam was absolutely critical to our formation, I want to say, as a band, because it's really something. It's a whole different listening school that we went to when we sort of just started jamming with a bunch of guys we met every weekend or every couple of weekends and seeing amazing shows in between. I kind of forever want that feeling again back in my life. because every week or weekend there was something really wonderful to look forward to, and it was this wonderful feeling where I was learning so much. We got a lot more exposure to see music than we ever had in our lives. Rural Alaska has only so much music to offer a person. And, you know, it was really amazing to be hit by all these bands coming down from California or wherever they're touring from, getting to see their residents, you know, up close. I don't know, so many things. Just, we really we were in the middle of a catharsis, I want to say, when it all started.
Yeah, it was good, you know, moving from Green Acres to the city at that time.
You are my wife. Goodbye, city life.
Yeah, exactly. Green Acres. Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Oh, yeah, good old Zsa Zsa, beaming in on our wonderful square machines.
So, for those out there in laptop land, I have seen some photos floating around of the silver painted antennaed performer on stage. It's definitely something to see. So, jumping ahead a little bit, when did you two actually start playing together? You mentioned something 2010. I was going to ask you this.
2010 is when it really, we take it to the stage permanently.
The first live performance of us together as an actual band.
We realized we were a band, and we were going to be a band.
I had drummed with her once before at Live Girls Theater in Ballard, where she was doing
Holly Weird songs.
Holly Weird songs, and it was the first time I'd actually drummed with her, but I was dressed as an alien, so no one knew who I was.
It was for like a cabaret for this sort of a really amazing underground women's theater comedy sketch nightclub thing. And you go in there, you get your wine and sit down, and all these entertaining, fabulous, funny, up-and-coming Seattle performers would, in a nice underground venue, like, give you all this fun stuff, and then a local musician would play. And they asked me to do it on a couple of occasions. It was really fun. I knew a lot of the girls in the cabaret, and it was just really, really, really wonderfully fun. And Brian, he did drums behind me, and I guess that was the first time we ever did it.
Yeah, it might have been 2000.
So it was us gaining our confidence to just call ourselves a band.
Yeah, we've been playing. Holly had started jamming so much. Holly then started writing songs because she was used to, you know, being in Alaska and writing music and doing things and considering it all as something she has to perform, even if she has to come back and layer stuff in, you know. And so she could envision this thing, and it was like she decided to start writing music that actually had more space in it to allow for the other musicians to come in and stuff. And so we've actually been playing a bunch of things sometime like between 2008 and 2010.
Yeah, the goal was to leave room because with Holly Weird, it was really dense sound. I was sort of, you talked about being a one-man band earlier when I was talking to you, and that's sort of what it kind of felt like at Holly Weird. I was a one-man band, and I had to make a lot of sound.
And I was the roadie.
And I did. But then I was playing for the jam band that we were hanging out with all the time. I would bounce all my works off of those guys. I would come in to play it. I'd be like, I can't hold it in. And I would perform for them awkwardly. And they were so nice about it. And they were like, you know, this is good or whatever. But my friend, Jeff, one time was like, I'd like to play to that. He's like, I just don't know where to have room to play, though. He scratched his head, and it really scratched mine, actually. And I thought about it.
I could hear it, but it took me kind of, I guess you'd say, a while to actually build the skill up to play what I heard to it. Mm-hmm. But because I was always around her while she wrote it, I heard every moment of it. I hear it and 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 hear it while I was painting, while I was cooking something, while I was, you know, picking something up off the floor that the cats put down that they shouldn't have. You know, whatever it was, you know, I was always listening to it. And I guess at some point, it's just the way that she wrote was there in my head. And it just always would come out. It would come out in these jam times, you know, and I would focus on whatever it was that she would play. I'd focus sometimes so hard on what it was she was playing when what was supposed to be an open jam. I'd overthink it, and I'd have to jump to someone else and be like, hey, I'm not trying to like write Holly's song with her, but I'm trying to write Holly's song with her. I don't know it yet, so I'm gonna play what you're playing over here, Jeff, because that's cool too. But I was always just writing, you know, and eventually we just played enough times in our basement, you know, that when we'd go and jam, I think, you know, it was obvious that we had it already worked out, you know. Yeah, we just didn't know what to name ourselves at that time because, Holly was like
super pregnant.
She was super pregnant, you know. And,
first baby.
And so
it was a little bit, it was crazy.
We played one show together. We called it the Knocked Up Tour. And we played a bunch of the early songs. I think, let's see, we played Stay. And
Face of Pokers, we figured out.
Face of Pokers.
Yeah,
it's hard to remember.
Settle Down.
Settle Down. Oh, Settle Down.
Settle Down was like the showstopper that night. There were these ladies who came into the bar and they were loving it, and we got so kind of high on it. We were like, this is so exciting. People love the crazy lines in that song, and like they were cracking up and loving it. You know, our rock scene where we're from in Seattle is full of mischief makers and wry, funny, what would look like bitter old men with anger grudges, but when you find out like what their lyrics are, you'll die. They're smart but funny, and lots of just wacky ideas. So we like that. We like to surprise people, and so that was a real win. We realized we could make these fun, exciting experiences happen. I guess we got really excited during that show. It went very well.
And then we had a baby.
Right? Like practically.
Which is kind of what Settle Down was about, anyways. Was, you know,
the song literalizes the whole experience of that time.
And then there was a period of time, of course, like a few years, like always happens. They go, you know, what happened to Motley Crue? They've been gone, or Metallica's like, well, they had kids, and so they stopped making music for a few years because they went, oh, good Lord. and then suddenly, but during that time, actually, Holly wrote a lot of songs and stuff, and that's a lot of where the songs for Age of Fiction really kicked in, was during those years with our first kid, you know, where there were just things. I mean, obviously, she, from all the experience of having her, you know, both of our lives change in that way of having a kid, but especially, you know, her actually having the kid, having her body go through the metamorphosis of that, you know, and all the implications, you know, with existence and things. So a lot of thought was in there, and writing. And that's like where it stewed, kind of, where it was sat there for a minute and stewed and then had to explode.
We were also boiling down because that part of our life in Seattle, you know, it was getting very expensive. It was laughable what happened to me and my jobs and so forth, and Brian especially. I mean, I was an educator. You could expect me to get bad treatment and poor pay, but Brian was a 7th generation carpenter, and he was working on fine wood boats in Seattle, and then the whole boat industry just kind of went away, and just kind of watching everything kind of change underneath us as we were having kids made it so much harder for us to survive at the time. So it really felt like, you know, things, we were at like I don't know, is it some sort of mythical challenge point? And Age of Fiction,
we're at the crossroads, and we meet you know, Val Kilmer.
Yeah, Age of Fiction was totally an outpouring, I think, of that as well. Just it was like a survival mechanism.
And that's a good segue. Now that we're into some Age of Fiction, why don't we go ahead and play a song? This one here is "It Never Was" by Age of Fiction.
It was
It Never Was by Age of Fiction. What can you guys tell me about this?
Well, it was written after the name had existed. It was written afterwards, and you know, that's what I know the most about it, is it coming along after and us going, interesting, you know, because it wasn't intentional, and I know that, and I'm not the writer, so I'll let.
It's true. He was there, and he did experience this. It was kind of weird how we came up with Age of Fiction, and I think we've talked about it. We're not sure which one of us actually came up with the original title, because we were having a conversation, and I do feel like I was like, that would be a great name for a band, which is something I say a lot. But I really meant it.
Events at the time, and how, you know, everything, you can't trust anybody because they're all lying, everyone, and everyone's believing whatever fiction they're being fed, you know, and kind of like, the name stems from Bullfinch's The Age of Fiction, I think. Isn't that this name?
There's The Age of Chivalry and The Age of, what was the other one?
No, right.
Yeah, so Bullfinch mythology and Arthurian legends. But we sort of pictured that this was like, that there's a sort of a narrative everyone's making, and everyone's making their own narrative. I guess there's a lot of ways to look at it, which is one of the things we love about Age of Fiction. We don't try to solidify all our meanings, but
and that's
certainly,
why the first album we made the cover be a book cover.
Right.
You know, book cover, and so you're reading up a story.
This was about It Never Was. It Never Was.
Right.
And so the Age of Fiction in that just wrote itself. The very first thing I came up with, that line, was, it never was, it never was. It was the first thing that came in through my head. And so, I don't know, I just loved that, this idea that that the truth didn't have to have ever existed. We think about it for our own selves. People decide what the truth even means. It just brought on all these layers of ideas that were so rich in metaphor and art that I was just dipping in. And
the old saying of the truth is written by the victors.
Yeah, there's so much in that, and it really resonated to that point. And then the rest of it just sort of came on. I heard the notes. I tend to hear songs that are kind of like, I hear notes in my head, and I hear vowel sounds. I'm really verbal. Everything is very verbal with me and linguistic. And so I hear vowel sounds, and I tend to start singing ahs, oohs, and open sounds that specifically just sound like they're part of the sound in my head that want to be. And sometimes I just form words around them. That doesn't always happen, but it did sort of in this case. That It Never Was started coming out. And then The Age of Fiction, I heard or something, and I just was like, I looked up, I thought about The Age of Fiction, our band name, and I realized it was The Age of Fiction, and that it was perfectly aligned to the song. And then it was one of those songs where I just breathed out the rest of it, and that whole, you've got one thing less to say, and you think it's all been said, that chord progression, which is addictive as hell to play for me. I love playing that over and over for days till someone goes insane, probably me. And it's so fun, and bluesy part, and then morphed into wanting to be that. I tend to just follow the call of the song. It tends to just tell me what to do. And when it doesn't, I tend to walk away for the day or an hour, whatever happens.
So those out there in laptop land, we're getting a little acapella thing going on here once in a while. So stay tuned for the end of the program. Definitely got something cool without giving out any spoilers. So it never was, among other things, was off the first AOF album, right? Age of Fiction album called True Fiction, came out in June 2021. Is that correct?
That's right.
So also for these guys out in laptop land, I've been doing some research, and this is basically what we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about. You guys did like what, 4 albums in under a year?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did 4 albums. We recorded 4 albums
in a weekend.
In 2 days, over May 1st and I believe 2nd. And I think we futzed around on the morning of the 3rd with one other song or something. But it was really just one weekend. And the idea was to record as much as we could. I told Raymond I have 30 songs on my garage wall. And he's like, I'm ready to capture whatever you've got. And I think he came in here, he's a guy who can work his ass off, but he's used to just, I don't know, putzing around with people who are only half serious, and he was surprised what we threw at him.
Let's even go back to that. See, what happened was we've had some of these songs, and Holly, some of the songs we have are go back before she did Holly Weird and that stuff. And she just, it was COVID, right? So everyone's stressed out at being alone. No one can play music, and no one can do anything. And we were like, we got to find some way to record all of this stuff. I bet we can record it because we're watching suddenly everybody be, doing shows from their bedroom or whatever, right? Neil Diamond and Willie Nelson or whatever. People are just,
they're in their pajamas. We can do that.
And so we're like, hey, is there anything? And we put out there, and Raymond was like, oh, well, I use this and that. You could do this. And, there was a couple of little things over a week or two or whatever. And Holly kept asking certain things, and then he's like, because Raymond has for years been videoing bands in Seattle. And he's kind of how our friend Jeff, who we would play bass with for a long time.
The bassist from the band Cled.
Yeah, Jeff said that, he was a gift to the music industry of Seattle because he would show up quiet as a mouse, set up some cameras around and record everybody. And then all of a sudden, like 2 days later, because he went and got your email, he didn't hardly say a word to you. A couple days later, there'd be this video of your show.
Edited
with like two or three different, sometimes 4 camera views and stuff, and he just did it because he needed to be. And he's been in in the Seattle music scene for decades and playing music for since the late '60s, I believe. But he just he did this, and of course COVID killed everything. And just like, so he was needing an outlet, right, for what he loves to do, which is be around music and do music, and he was doing this thing, and he had recorded us at a couple of shows before, and did a few, and I do believe that we were the first people that he used 3 cameras with and did all these fades between and stuff.
One of the early ones,
yeah, or one of the early ones, I don't know. But and so he was just like, well, you know what? Actually, I've got some time coming up in between jobs. I can come up, and do this. And Holly's like, well, what do you like for dinner? I'll cook it, whatever it is. We'll, if you want to do that, we can't offer much at this moment, but we'll make good. And he was just like, no, I just want to come up, and he kind of expressed that, he wants to, he's always wanted to get into producing bands and stuff. He always hears great stuff in there that sometimes he feels was missed, because he's been to see someone, 10 times or whatever. Then he hears their album come out and he's like, oh, but you didn't pull this thing out that sounds like this. It makes you feel like, But I could hear it and I could pull it, so he just wanted, and so he wanted the opportunity. We were willing. And so, it's kind of, everyone's first project in a way.
We were all excited to be there. I mean, he's told a story that he heard us at our first show at Lucky Liquor, where he had the camera set up, set them all up. He's figured, oh, here comes a band or whatever, and he went outside to smoke a cigarette. He said, and he was smoking it for a second, and he smoked it for a second more, and then he put it out, and he came back in because he was like, what's going on in here, And he really liked the sound of Age of Fiction. He felt like it could be really major, and it's great. There's very few people who have kind of put all of their belief behind us in life. Many people in life do that for you, I guess. It's pretty rare, and he put a lot of faith behind us and a lot of belief in us. And the more we got to know him and hear about all of the music he listens to, and he has turned me on to so many bands. He's got these huge wall of music. He is like a music knowledge database. And not only that, a musician. He listens to little scraps of songs. Like, he loves to collect little bits of sound, and his own music is
He's an audiophile.
filled with it. Yeah. And so to have somebody listening so carefully like us in such detail, he's our biggest supporter and biggest fan. And
and wonderful for me too as a drummer, because he's a drummer. He's a good drummer. And so, to be recorded, a lot of people are guitarists or vocalists or keyboards, stuff like that, do the recording, but to have a drummer record you, kind of nice as a drummer to get, because he pulls it out, but he knows how to blend it in, the way, because when you're playing the drums, you hear it, as a blended thing. Sometimes it can overpower whatever's going on or be underheard or whatever, but that you try to hear, and he kind of hears that, and he had a way of through whatever challenges, recording in our garage, he had a way of kind of blending it together and pulling it out, so it sounds like we're both heard.
So for the uninitiated, just to jump in here real quick, this Raymond guy, you want to give him his props by name?
Raymond Bolin. Raymond Bolin, and he goes by Harry Nipple Productions for his production side. He's, you can find Harry Nipple Productions on Bandcamp. He's got a huge YouTube website, which I recommend you check it out. Hundreds of videos. If you want to hear the real underground Seattle music, it's not anyone who had tons of money and giant advertising or walls worth of posters, but all the people in Ray's website, that's really what you hear if you go out by yourself at night. You're going to find 6 guys in the bar, but that's the Seattle scene now. And I'll tell you what, it's full of like survivors and some really incredible, I want to say apocalyptic music scene music, because the music scene felt like, we bourgeoised out bad, and then it just started crushing the old clubs and turning them into these other kinds of establishments all around Seattle. It's awful to watch so many famous places with so many amazing bands performed just die.
Let's take a break here. This is a good segue, I guess, into another song. You guys mentioned this earlier. So why don't we go ahead and play Settle Down?
Nice.
Cool.
So, Age of Fiction, settle down. We were talking before we broke into the song. Ray's contributions to the band. Um, Obviously, on a production side, Brian brought up a good point
Well,
about a drummer.
Oh yeah, we need to freeze right there because we
Yeah.
do need to give props.
he played a lot of. He came in with a lot of extra instrumentation and stuff in places, little things, accompaniment, a lot of So
Little
yeah, I mean, I guess
keyboard bits,
production,
kind of-
yeah. But I want to give him props as a musician on it too. You know,
If you look through our notes on Bandcamp, he's really, we know pretty much everything he's in, so be sure to check those out. There are parts that, yeah, he came in later where something couldn't be heard, brought it out, and added some kind of little bit of a riff that's soft underneath and just helps fill and support.
We call him our Eno.
He is our Eno.
Yeah, it's hard to remember everything now because it was so many so fast. You know, I know that there's things he did tremolo bass on something to add things. You know, he did extra little rhythm bits in places. They were subtle. You know, they're subtle and there are things that you almost wouldn't even notice.
I think he added some percussion bits. There's a place where there needed to be a long note. He told me he even taped down a key at one point.
Keyboard. He did it. Yeah, he did some interesting.
Because he had to do another thing.
Soundscaping almost. You know, help with thickening. You know, in places that was kind of nice. Which is what you like when you have that 1/3 instrument in a band. You know.
But it's true. Yeah, he did a lot of things, and just over a lot of. He's a very multi-instrumentalist, and so I just want to tip my hat because he's the sort of production guy who fills in anybody you would need in order to make this happen quickly.
You guys always have a lot of energy to what you guys do. Where does this come from? I mean, you guys have off day. It seems like everything I hear from you guys, it's just got like this, like I said, this driving thing going on, and the energy comes through. Whether it's the keys, the drums, the vocals. Why don't you go and tell me about that a little bit? What kind of coffee are you guys drinking here?
I think I did drink a lot of coffee during the Mayday sessions, but yeah, I definitely come with a lot of energy. It's like something people tell me. They meet me. People always are surprised how small I am if they meet me and didn't know me, and then they're always surprised how much energy I have when they get to know me. But also, I feel very driven, and I feel as funny as I like to be, and as much of I have a real like a really thorough sense of humor that comes into all kinds of stuff. But I'm also so serious about music. I'm deadly serious, I've been told, about music. Whatever mood I'm encapsulating fully into my body and really breathe it out, put it out through the music. And
that's just it. Is she's really, yeah, she, like I said, she likes powerful music and she plays music that feels good. And back to that, just I've heard it, so I feel like I know how to help it get, even though sometimes we butt heads about it and have to move on from a song occasionally because it's, we're like, a lot of that's just, I feel like I have to digest it longer, because she came up with it and has played it several times, and then I come to play it and I'm like, but then I digest it because I want to, and I want to see at the end of the song, once we've done it just right, like her excitement over it, because that's what she's putting into it, is just, she has this, it's like, it is, man. It's, you're a kid in the candy store. She thought of this thing and she's like, I can make it happen.
I love it a lot. I just really love to do it.
And I love being part of that. I love being part of the, it's just fun, which is interesting too. And then, have her allow me to play with her.
Brian also hits this place, he clicks in, I want to say, where Age of Fiction does this really well. Because we've been jamming so well together, that's all completely improv. And when we do improv, it's all living in the moment, and you just keep feeling what the other person is doing. You're really locked into listening in a dance, and you're really together. And if somebody stops, you stop too. You get to the point where you can mirror each other's images on time as you're doing them, and that's what what we do really well is happening now, and I can feel that in real time. And Brian is right there. He knows right where we're together in the moment. So it's a thrill ride I'm going on, and he's totally on the ride with me. We're there together.
You're the main songwriter, Holly, but I'm doubting very highly that you dictate the drum parts to Brian, or do you? So
I think of what Brian does as fully composing drums. I think of him as a composer. I find what he does with the drums to be amazing.
Some of her songs were just beyond me at the moment, and I couldn't play to them, and I'd get frustrated, and I'd try, and then I had to learn. Learning to play to Holly's music was an education for me. You know, I owe my drumming to her. You know, for one, I mean, she let me play to her music when I kind of sucked at times, and she still was. I guess I didn't suck that bad. I remember what some of the stuff that I did early on, and it wasn't necessarily what I would want to repeat now. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. She liked things that I did, you know, and I was still at that time trying to be careful. I wanted to play, you know, I guess my roots are more as a percussionist than a drummer, and so I was trying to play to the feeling of the music, trying to play to the thing, and so I latched on to the most powerful instrument she has, which is her voice.
We loved what we were making. We still love what we're making.
She comes up with unique rhythms and places to make changes and stuff, and progressive stuff, and I kind of learned to play to the, like, because the song will move kind of from one feeling to the next, and so you gotta adjust what you're playing to play to that feeling.
are there drummers that you grew up listening to, or even now, or drummers that you admire? Or...
It's hard. I love all of them. I can't remember all of their names, you know, but I mean, definitely I love Bonham, you know, and you know, Dejanette, you know, and just so many great. I mean, you know, Brain, you know, he was. They're all, you know, each one is so. And I can't, like I said, I wish I could remember the names. The drummer for Sleepy Time Girl Museum, the drummer for.
Cool.
Yeah, Danny Carey. You know, definitely. I mean, just all of them. That's the thing. It's if I heard music, they all influenced me, and they all made me feel something slightly different. Bonham was definitely, you know, my earliest, most influential drummer.
What about you, Holly? Some names or people that, bands, whatever, that stand out, you know, that kind of got you started on this whole thing?
Yeah, my mom was sort of Woodstock era and really into Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, Cat Stevens, really into Melanie, and so those hit me really young. And my dad was quite a bit older. He was in his 50s when he'd had me. He'd been Purple Heart in World War II at 18, and he died at 91 some time ago now. And but he was definitely an influence because he used to sing songs to me from wartime. I grew up with Moonlight Becomes You and Futurakaseka and stuff like that. I think it really helped that my parents were kind of into theater, and I would just pick up like show tunes and things like that. So I loved Bette Midler. I liked singers who had clear or powerful voices when I was listening to women. Joni Mitchell came a little bit later, but I was really, really into, as I got a little older, Lisa Gerrard. Lorena McKennett's voice hit me. I heard that in the 90s and got all really excited, you know, and like I tried to sing as clearly as I could. I really liked clarity and had done a lot of, you know, choir and stuff, so I'd had to do a lot of practice holding a note, making it crystal clear and stuff like that. But then I also started to love stuff that was a lot wilder, that had a lot more dynamic. And I remember a friend of mine got me into listening to some Nina Hagen one day, and my mind just fell apart. I was like, what? You know, it was after that I remembered Susie and the Banshees that I had started loving. I met Brian at the same time, and he hit me with Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. It wasn't wasn't long after that I was into things like Typo Negative. I loved their wry humor and their dark gothicness. It just got heavier and heavier, and then until I was listening to Sisters of Mercy, and stuff, and then it became kind of prog. We moved to Seattle, and I started listening to I really into heavy stuff around Seattle. Namely, this was major for us, Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum. We followed that band. Anytime they would come to Seattle, we would go see their shows. The whole family that came from Idiot Flesh and also Fond Fable, and then we followed Culture Shock, like rather religiously for some time. Two bands which are intense and incredibly dynamic, all over the place art rock. And we were seeing stuff like The Residents, No Means No. We were just, our friend Jeff, our friend who was a bassist in Cled, was a wealth of music knowledge. So he would tell us every time there was a band in town, we would go see it.
You guys are all over the place. Just listening to your influences, it confirmed what I hear in the music. For somebody that's not familiar with Age of Fiction, just tuning in for the first time or just kind of, dipping their toes in the water, I hate to ask this question, but I'm going to because I've been putting everybody on the spot with this. What do you sound like? Somebody's like, "Oh, what do you guys sound like? What do what kind of band are you?" What's your answer to that?
My answer to that is, well, what do we sound like to you? Because I don't know. Because that's the thing. Because for me, I sound like I'm drumming to my wife, and for Holly, she feels like she's playing this thing in her head. But to you, listening to it, what do we sound like?
We have some comparisons to people who are all over the place.
But these are things that sometimes, you're like, people are grasping for something and they're picking the most popular thing they can think of. But I don't know. I don't know what I sound like. I guess I sound a little bit like me because I can't hold myself to any of these people.
I've been saying hard-hitting rock, prog. Sometimes I say prog, but then some of our songs are more prog than the others, so I feel bad that I say prog sometimes. But then, I don't know, this new album has a lot of prog in it. I don't know, but I do feel like it's a rock, it's hard-hitting. I feel like the vocals are dynamic, so I say that a lot. Even theatrical sometimes.
Why don't we go ahead and do a song, and then I'll answer what I think I hear. This is off the album Werewolf, October 2021. This is a song called Big Bad. Age of Fiction, Big Bad. Um, this song kind of got a little swing to it. You guys, we were talking before about influences, etc. The drums, I mean, it just got like this little swing to it that.
I love a swing rhythm. It just comes naturally to me. I never had to think about it. You know, some people are surprised when a drummer can play swing, I've heard, or whatever. You know, I've had people be like, "Oh, you do swing?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, it's just a rhythm." You know, and I don't know. I guess drumming, I just feel it, and Holly just kind of wrote it because she just felt it. It's just like
Yeah,
what was there.
That one started with just the opening line. Let's see. Wait. We're talking Big Bad. That's
Big
right.
Bad.
What is all the trouble between women and the man? And I just heard it. I was thinking about Little Red Riding Hood at the time because I was starting to codify that I had a lot of songs about werewolves, like a lot, just kicking around. Because I write about werewolves as a metaphor a lot because apparently I feel like there's a monster inside of us all. And it's in my mind a werewolf. It always comes out through songs. And by that point I was like thinking about more werewolf songs, you know. I liked it and I was kind of riffing in my own imagination in it, and it occurred to me that Grandma in the old version of that story, the Grimm story, is really the badass of the story because she tears the wolf open with a knife and she just, you know, climbs out. The wolf never had a chance, and then it occurred to me that Grandma is actually the thing to be feared in the night. Oh, actually Grandma might be the monster inside of us all. I don't know. So it started tripping me out. I was like, this song, and it came out bluesy, which I thought was ironic, and I like an ironic moment in a song and the whole feeling of it. So that song really was fun. It came out quite like that little piano riff opening, that ding ding.
Funny
ding,
you brought
ding.
that up because I had got my notes here.
Yeah.
I have piano with a question mark circled because I heard a piano in there, and I was going to
Yeah.
ask you if I actually heard what I heard buried in the mix. Not that it's super buried, but it's kind of. I was thinking like, okay, is this just a keyboard that sounds like a piano, or
Good question. So I'm a big piano fan, and actually, when I first started playing and writing my own songs, I had keyboards, but slowly moved toward a piano, and was absolutely adamant that just like Tori Amos, I wanted a Bosendorfer one day, or just completely just a piano, you know, and be raw. Just me and the piano and raw. That's what I was thinking. And then
I carried that 80-pound thing around.
so a lot of my songs, when I moved into, I really had a moment in Seattle where I did a show that was half acoustic and half my first electronic songs ever performed, and I still to this day blend my sounds together. So I use a keyboard, but I also use the Virus, an Access Virus, and it's got every analog sound under the sun, and you can blend the sounds together just by playing them at the same time. And so most of my songs have two sounds playing simultaneously, or I bring one up partway through, or sometimes I skip sounds, but more commonly than not, I stay within the parameters of a sound, and I might tweak some stuff on the Virus or mess with the modulation to get sort of a more full-bodied synthesizer effect out of the sound. But piano is just a mainstay. I love a piano, and I have several songs that are still in the piano sound. Now,
So, but I was like, but she needs a better keyboard to trigger it than this big electronic piano that she has me carrying around everywhere. Something that's a little bit lighter, say.
but I have to tell you, the big and to this is that the piano sounds on the WK1800 Casio, which is kind of an out of print keyboard, is completely awesome, and it's larger than life, and in person it sounds like someone's got a baby grand in the room.
So Big Bad. I mentioned before you got that. We just discussed the piano thing. You put that with that swing drum beat. You guys go into this really cool change up, kind of like mid song. I don't have the exact time, and then you guys go back into that main structure. It's just like it knocks me out. It's incredible. And then the ending, it's just so freaking heavy, and it's one of those. You ever listen to a song and you don't want it to stop, kind of thing? And that's kind of what you guys got going on here. It kind of stops, then it comes back in, then it stops, and it reminded me like the Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop thing, like the song that never ends, because every time it stops, it kicks back in. I'm like, yeah, okay, keep going. Here we go. We're still at it.
That's Holly. That she writes, and she writes with this. She wants the song,
I think as a dancer, I love the negative space a lot, and
movement.
yeah, and I like it to surprise. I like it to feel exciting every time we come back on it, or I don't really want to play it too many times if it's not. And
don't underestimate the influence that Yes and King Crimson had on us, and music and it going with it. I don't know. That's how she writes, and it feels good to play to it, to go places. It's like I say it's like playing the music of driving hordes through Mordor. It feels like it's like it's got that feel.
Loping, I like to call it. I really like the change up in that song. I like how it goes to a really dramatic place where I get to do something dynamic with my voice. That's fun. And then coming back, and you mentioned that heavy ending and then stopping and starting, and I immediately want to bring up the band Caius because
Heck yeah.
I love Caius, and I remember their instrumentals having a huge effect on me, and the Circus Leaves Town, El Rodeo, and those songs really made me think differently about how rock instrumentation could go, if you know what I mean.
Totally. When I listen to you guys, I put you on a spot earlier and said, what do you sound like? I can't tell you what you sound like, but I can tell you what I hear. For Holly, your vocal style, we talked about this a little bit in pre-production. You said that you got to push yourself a little bit to be heard. You got this aggressive, loud, like in-your-face vocal style. And on top of that, I mean, you just got this incredible voice. And you touched on it earlier. And every once in a while, you mellow it out a little bit. And you got this really, really sweet voice. And just to plug the big ending coming up here in a little while, you guys want to stick around for that because we are going to kind of touch like sweet voice Holly a little bit. And your phrasing, I mean, you just have this incredible phrasing. Brian, I mentioned earlier, you got this frenetic drumming, but it fits everything you guys do. You guys both have this energy. I watched the videos, and you guys are just going at it. I mean, like you mentioned it earlier on in the conversation, that you guys are like super focused, and I could see that, and you could hear it in the music. You guys are super focused, but every once in a while, Brian will look up at you, or you'll be playing your keys, and you crack this smile, and you guys got this like little telepathy thing from you, and it on screen it like translates to me watching it as like, yeah, we got this.
And it's I just tear the hell out of drumsticks. So I really like when Santa puts them in my stocking.
Hint, hint.
Yeah, whatever. That's the way it is.
And it just, you guys make a lot of noise for a duo, and I mean that in like the sweetest compliment possible. No, I mean that. For two people, I mean, stripped down, you guys are essentially keys and drums, vocals. And like I said, you make a lot of noise for the two of you.
And that's what I said. That's why I say her vocals are the number one instrument, because they're so powerful. They make us a trio in a way.
All this music talk got me kind of psyched for another song, so why don't we go ahead and take care of that right now. This is Age of Fiction. This is Witch of the Woods.
Just like swimming in the dirt, I need to feel to the trees, 'cause the trees are good. You know when I'm dead, I'll know everything I should. Going back to the trees, my neighborhood. You know when I'm dead, after now, there's a witch in the woods. 'Cause I am part of the trees, the earth, wind, and night sky shine inside of me, reflecting pool of ice, shining fire inside of me, watching waves in the night light stars inspire me, reaching low in the sunlight this light.
All right, so we're back with Brian and Holly, Age of Fiction, and we just played Witch of the Woods. That comes from the Takes an Age album. Came out December 2021. The fourth in this marathon of records that you guys knocked out, which I just found out was in a course of a weekend, pretty much.
Yeah.
The Mayday recordings.
Yeah, it took Raymond a while to help us on the production side, obviously, and we began releasing them as we did. Raymond was hard at work, so we all dug in for a year's worth of just production, post-production sort of communication and work and PR and making of artwork and so forth. It was busy.
The truth is, most of them were recorded on Saturday, weren't they? And
Yeah,
then,
Saturday was the big day.
We did a little bit of, sound check and stuff, and recorded a few of the songs to start with. And I think he may have used one of those for something. I don't remember which track. And then we spent Saturday basically recording all of those songs and working on one that we didn't put out because we just weren't happy with how it worked, because it's technically difficult because of the way that Holly's using the looper and I'm trying to drum to things, and the drumming with the looper can sometimes set everyone off rhythmically, and it gets all awry and it turns into a landslide, and you go, oh shit. And so and Ray used some of the drumming and some other things that he did or whatever. But anyways, we spent a lot of time, and the neighbors were like, wow, you guys played a lot.
Yeah, our neighbors are really nice. Fortunately, in our neighborhood, they sat out on their deck and had the whole concert they felt they were getting.
They were good.
We were really
And then on Sunday, there was some overdubbing. There was a bunch of overdubbing and trying to do some things and some listening and working. I don't know if we recorded something.
I feel like we recorded the last song, maybe. We were doing them in order, so we recorded them in the order that we released them, quite literally. So, by the time we get to It Takes an Age, I've been singing for a day and a half.
So, Witch of the Woods, to me, and I'm not trying to say something out of place. It's almost like a simple type of arrangement for you guys. Yet at the same time, there's all this stuff going on. What's your take on that? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's not a progressive song in the way some of the other songs are, but I have a lot of these sort of bits, and depending on the album, but all of the 4 albums were put together with songs from different times that we had kind of stored up, and there was a huge amount of songs that were recent. There was a huge amount of songs in the main part of Age of Fiction just being out and playing for the first time, and there were some songs that we were pulling out from older times because we got there compiling the albums and thought, oh, that would be good in here. That would really go with the theme.
Some of those like that have this more punk coming from, with our love of No Means No and stuff. It's like there's a lot of songs that we almost get this kind of feel with,
Witch of the Woods was sort of our 90s rock place that we had inhabited, but it also had all these new feelings. It was kind of amazing. We were sad kind of coming out to the woods, but we really fell back in love with nature. And this song was kind of a redemption song. This song was important to Age of Fiction and this album because it sort of helped codify what it takes an age would be. We had a collection of the other songs like Great Great Gandalf, and we had counting trees and some other natural things and stuff about work and ancestry. Like Get Into This is a little bit dedicated to sort of Brian's woodworking in this particular album, and we did a lot of things that kind of our past. But that Witch of the Woods was a power song. It was like, we're going to take the experience of being shoved out of this city and we're going to build it as power back into ourselves, and we're going to know that we belong here in this moment, and we're going to take it, we're going to make stuff, and we're going to do something with it. And I think that was a kind of turning point song. We were working hard on Age of Fiction music.
Back to Marching Through Mordor.
Yeah.
A lot of, and it's interesting on It Takes an Age too, because there's a lot of that mythical magic energy that's kind of reminiscent of the feel of 70s Prague, coming through that in a way, and with some of the other songs. But I don't know, it's like there was that about this album, kind of.
So there was a sort of simple punk rock message in it, I think, and Brian and I felt it, and in performing it, it just felt like sort of solidifying what we were going to do, and it was sort of fitting for the end album to sit out here in the wilderness and write this song that was about being kind of stuck to, and then sort of sticking it to back, and taking your own power back. The Witch of the Woods, I'm going to build a fortress from here. I'm going to make it a powerful place, and it became a whole image for the album. We ended up designing the sort of the cover as that image came together, deciding that was her castle. That's the Witch of the Woods.
So this all ties in nicely to like one of my final topics that I have here. The lyrics, kind of poetic, kind of esoteric. You guys, if there's a message, it's not like right in your face. It's it's something you have to think about. They're definitely open to interpretation. Like I said, it's not something where you're telling people this, and this. It's something where you could sit down, and I'm a lyric guy, you know that. So like, it's something that you could just sit there and re-listen to it and ponder it and just come up with different meanings or different emotions or different feels. Every listen, basically. How do you go about writing your lyrics?
Yeah, I touched on this a little. I think one of the main ways it tends to come to me through sounds. I like vocalizing, if that makes sense, like more than singing.
Sure.
I like the sounds of other languages. I loved Dead Can Dance because Lisa Gerard made up her own language, and I thought that was rad. She just sings her own language.
She loves English too.
I love English, and I feel like I felt really comfortable, making up made up words to do something sort of Celtic sounding to make a really interesting Trillalalorum kind of song. I can add all of these words that I sort of make up, and I tend to ooh and ah and hum a lot, so it's really, the words grow out of it.
She used to always do it in high school. She used to always do a game where she'd write down random things people would say, and she'd do stream of conscious writing and stuff just as an exercise and fun. And a lot of that, I think, has been the origin too.
Yeah, I love stringing thoughts together, and they come to me really easily. I find it easy to make a rhyme if I have to. And so it's easy to start from a place where it's just organically what I hear. If what I hear is thumb, 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 maybe it would turn into some sort of word like them, them. I don't know what I would do, but it would come out kind of naturally in stream of consciousness like that. I would tend to assign a couple of the words, or maybe it would come out in a whole sentence, or maybe I have enough beats, and this time only 2 of the words came out. So I sat there and thought it through, and I scratched out 5 lines and then hated it and came back 2 weeks later and just nailed it for some reason. It just happened.
That's an important part, some of the important part of it is life, normal life, forcing the the pot to boil for a little bit, to stew a little bit, so it actually drives her nuts, and then it just comes out.
Yeah, it's a formula.
Um, for people that want to delve into this a little bit more, and I would highly recommend delving into it a lot more, where can we find your stuff at?
We are widely available. Bandcamp is a great place to support the artists, so I'll always mention that. Bandcamp Fridays, first Friday of the month, always a great way to support the artists. Beyond that, we love if anybody looks at our music anywhere. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it in Spotify. We're doing well. Yep, Amazon. Any place you buy music.
Hi, I'm Holly, and this is In My Room for Songs for Peace, and I hope you enjoy it.